Pure evil.
This morning, new details emerging about the victims and the heroes who jumped into action when the gunshots rang out. A high school football coach killed while shielding students from bullets. Another teacher's quick thinking saved 19 teenagers.
We all walked in that closet it was very tight and hot, and a lot of the kids were scared.
The accused gunman will be in court today. In the last 2 hours, he was escorted into jail in a hospital gown. Investigators called his social media accounts very, very disturbing.
Another big story we are following this morning, a dense fog advisory in effect until 10 a.m. Looking live through our morning camera. You can see, well, you can't see very much at all, in fact. This is our camera over downtown Jacksonville. And also, the fog is so thick in some places, it's just hard to see more than a few feet in front of you. Good
Visibility
morning.
very
It's terrible,
limited. Look at
isn't
it. The tops of the downtown buildings there. That tells a story. Good morning. Be careful as you drive to work and school this morning. Richard's going to track where the fog is the heaviest, and we'll check in with him in about 10 minutes. But we begin with a story and the latest on the deadly school shooting in Broward County. Right now, the accused gunman is in a Broward County jail cell working to get his mug shot, though we do have pictures of him being escorted into jail about 2 hours ago. You notice he's wearing a hospital gown after police officers took him into custody without incident. They apparently had to take him to the hospital, though they're not saying why. Investigators call him a former student at Stoneman Douglas High who had been expelled for disciplinary reasons.
19-year-old Nicholas Cruz is his name. The FBI and police are searching the Pompano Beach home where he lived with his friend's family. They are also working to learn what motivated the attack that killed 17 people. Investigators are also at a home in Lantana. It's about 30 miles north of Pompano, which the accused killer we're hearing may have visited more than once. And there will be no classes, as you might understand, at the high school for the rest of the week. Grief counselors also will be made available for students and parents coming up in about an hour at 8 a.m.
Now, the governor ordered all flags statewide to be flown at half staff. We expect to get new information from police at about 10:30 this morning. You can watch that live right here on the local station and on news4jax.com. We are covering this story from all angles this morning, hearing more stories from survivors and from some of their families.
News4Jax anchor Vic Michelucci is also live in Parkland. Vic, good morning.
Good morning, Bruce and Jen. As the sun comes up here in South Florida, it is a very, very somber scene. You can feel it in the air, the heartbreak, the pain, and the anguish. We are about 0.3 miles away from the actual high school, being kept away because it is still a very active crime scene. We know that investigators are still at the school. They are hoping to learn more as the day comes on. Also, unfortunately, we know that the bodies of the victims are at the school. Here's the latest. 17 killed, 14 others injured. 5 have life-threatening injuries. Some victims have not been identified. Now, those 5 people with life-threatening injuries are being treated at Broward County hospitals. Gunman 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz will face a federal judge later today. You're looking at video of him as he arrived at the jail. He was taken to the hospital shortly. We don't know the extent of his injuries. Now, he had been expelled from Douglas High School. He was not allowed to carry a backpack on campus prior to that. And we're told he had made threats to other students, so he attended another school. Now, we do have that new video of him. This is him going inside to the Broward County Jail overnight. Video of Cruz being escorted by law enforcement quickly went viral online. You can see the Broward County Sheriff's Office, heavy guard there to make sure that nothing happened after he was released from the hospital, still in his gown. Now, the gunman's classmates say he seemed quiet and strange, aloof and odd. Some even say they had predicted something terrible like this would happen.
A lot of people were saying that it was going to be him, stuff like that. We threw a lot of kids threw jokes around like that, saying that he was going to be the one to screw up the school. But it turns out, you know, everyone predicted it. That's crazy.
I had class with him sophomore year. I got assigned to a group project with him, and he started talking to me. He told me how he got kicked out of 2 private schools. He was held back twice. He had aspirations to join the military. He enjoyed hunting. He always just seemed very quiet and strange.
So much outrage because students and people all across the country are asking, should people have done something to stop that? That is the question this morning. So Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel calls Cruz's digital profile, quote, very, very disturbing. He posted a variety of gun and violence related pictures. On Instagram, he posted a picture with a shotgun. In another photo, he is holding a pistol. Photos show him covering his face with a bandana and brandishing long knives. Now, although none of the dead, none of the victims have been identified as of yet this morning, we are starting to learn some details. Last night, the sheriff did tell us that a football coach at the school was among those killed. I want you to look at this tweet. This is coming from Twitter. He did not release the coach's name, but the high school football team's Twitter account posted, "It is with great sadness that our football family has learned about the death of Aaron Feiss. He was our assistant football coach and our security guard. He selflessly shielded students from the shooter when he was shot. He died a hero, and he will forever be in our hearts and our memories." We're also hearing stories from survivors this morning. Dramatic pictures showing parents reuniting with their children last night. These photos show the students running out of the school. You can see there, many of them with their hands up in sheer terror. Now, there are some local connections to us in North Florida. Scott Johnson speaking with a woman who actually has relatives at this school. And Scott, we know the fear, the terror, the heartbreak that she must be feeling this morning.
That is the case, Vic. Fortunately, the woman's niece and nephew are doing okay. But she says her niece called her frantically, crying after watching her teacher get shot inside the school. Dr. Asha Jalil says her niece doesn't know whether her teacher is alive or dead. She says her nephew was evacuating the school with his classmates as she was texting him. Fortunately, both her niece and nephew are unharmed. She says after seeing the video and hearing what happened, she wanted to rush to be with her family.
I was devastated. I was like ready to jump in my car and drive down there because I was there last weekend. And I'm thinking, okay, do I need to get in my car and go and make sure they're okay?
And Dr. Asha Jalil says that area of Parkland is a very safe community, but nowadays, she says, shootings can happen anywhere. We're live. Scott Johnson, back to you.
Scott, thank you. As you said, Parkland is a very safe community here in Broward County. A lot of people that live here tell me they moved here because they thought they were protecting their family members. They thought they wouldn't have to deal with the crime, the violence, and the mayhem. In fact, just recently, it was selected as the safest city in the entire state of Florida. So as we drove in, we came in overnight. I want to talk about, what we saw here. This is an area with about 30,000 people. You have gated communities, very nice houses, nice cars. It is quiet, it is clean. The streets well manicured and groomed, lined with palm trees. Very high-end community where you would not expect something like this to happen. Now, Melanie Lawson also joining us, taking a look at the national and international attention. And Mel, this morning, you're looking at some front pages from across the world.
Vic, and that's all that they're really talking about right now. It is a big national story today. So let's take a look at some of those headlines, those front pages from around the country. The Philadelphia Inquirer right here saying 17 killed in a school shooting. You see the heartbreaking image there of students just in shock. And the one young girl in the glasses, you can just see the fear in her face. Also, the Wall Street Journal with this gunman kills 17 at Florida school. And again, you can see the picture of a very distraught student trying to cope with what is happening at her school. And finally, the New York Daily News, it shows a gun pointing at the readers. And the title there is "This Is Us." Written around the gun includes things like 18th school shooting in 45 days, NRA buys politicians, and more kids are slaughtered. So again, that's more of a political tone there, Vic.
Melanie, thank you. Absolutely heartbreaking all across the country. We are seeing people starting to pour into this area, coming with flowers, coming with balloons, coming with teddy bears. As we can imagine, this memorial is just going to grow I'm sure there's going to be a lot of vigils throughout the night, throughout the evening, and just so many people coming to pay their respects to the 17 lives lost. Again, 14 people injured here, at least 5 people in critical condition. So doctors, nurses, medical professionals doing everything they can to make sure that those people survive this horrific incident. Nicholas Cruz, the accused shooter, is expected to be in court today. We're going to continue to monitor all the situations from here in South Florida. But for now, we are live from Parkland, Florida in Broward County. Vic Micolucci, Channel 4, the local station. Bruce
Thank you,
and Jen,
Vic. A couple of other salient points. You and Scott were talking about the fact that Parkland is voted the safest city in Florida. It only had 7 violent crimes in the last year. When you compare that to some other cities, that tells you a lot. And also, you have to understand that Cruz got that gun legally.
Yeah, bought it legally, an AR-15, and we also know that he was not apprehended right away after the shooting, but was actually found in Coral Springs almost an hour later because he had walked out with some of those fleeing students. And
I do want to add that we expect to hear from the sheriff down in Broward at 10:30 this morning. We will have that update on the investigation live here on Channel 4 and on news4jax.com streaming live.
Joining us now is our News4Jax crime and safety analyst, Gil Smith. Gil, thanks for being here. Do appreciate it. You were a Jacksonville Sheriff's officer before retiring for 26 years, worked 6 of those years as a school resource officer. I want to talk about the investigation, obviously, in South Florida, but I know that what's on everybody's mind who's watching this morning is, how are my children being kept safe in local schools? And you've got some really good perspective in terms of how that happens here in Duval County.
Well, they do go through, like they said, fire drill training, active shooter training. Most of that training is done with the teachers and faculty. Very little is done with students involved, because you have to realize that if you're training students, you may be training a future active shooter. So they try to keep that training with students as minimal as possible. And from watching yesterday, it seems like they did everything according to protocol. If they hear shots, and of course they pull the fire alarm to draw the students out. And then once the teacher gets the signal that it's an active shooting, the first thing they do is go out in the hallway and grab it, keep all the students in their classroom, go out in the hall and grab as many students as they can, bring them inside their classroom, lock the door, then position themselves so that if a shooter is walking down the hall looking in the school, that they can't see the students inside the room. Have them in closets, lockers, any place that'll protect them. And it seems like that's what they did.
Gil, I heard an interview with one school administrator who said, we prepared for this, yet we were so unprepared. And you talk to the students and they say, this kid's social media accounts were very disturbing. He was banned from campus with a backpack. There were all these signs, and people are saying something should have been done. What could have been done?
Well, you have to look, that was true about this particular student. But what we don't know is how many other students were on a watch list. There are often several students that may have problems with certain issues. Now, you can't 100% guard against every student that has some type of psychological issue going on. It's just not possible to do. So the one precaution they did make was don't let him on with a backpack. But the thing is, whenever you have an attacker, when you have a shooting and an attacker, the more familiar the attacker is with their target area, the more likely that it's going to be a very dangerous shooting because of their familiarity. He knows the ins and outs of the school. I mean, you have one school resource officer. The officer can't be at every entrance and exit. Comes in real quick, maybe a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, and he can get started. It's very difficult to defend against.
Gil, how important is it? Because as we saw, it's a very large campus. I think about my son's middle school. It's a large campus. Cars come on. They have security, but protecting these kids, is this more about having a conversation, obviously not just with and making sure that the school staff is trained, but also a conversation with parents, a conversation with the kids themselves, also that if they do see something suspicious, you have to report it, even if you feel like maybe you're being a little nosy.
And that's a good point, Jennifer, because everyone is talking about the training at the time of the shooting. Most preparation begins before the shooter comes on campus. And you're absolutely right. He was on Snapchat making a lot of threats. But his kids will tell you that students are always on there upset with the teacher, saying they hate this teacher, they hate this student, they're going to get them. And law enforcement, they do contact these students, or school officials do. Then come to find out, we really break it down, well, I was just upset, I was trying to scare people, had no way of doing this or really no plan of doing this. This is something that goes on a lot with social media. Unfortunately, most of their social media friends are other students, And teachers and administrators don't see these things unless a student reports this. Now, sometimes the student may not report this because they're thinking, well, if I go to the school and tell this kid's going to come back at me. So that's one reason why they don't report this, but I can't stress that enough, that it must be reported.
All right, you're a dad, you're a cop, but you're also a school resource officer, which Jen pointed out. During your time as a school resource officer, if kids would come up to you after they heard news like this and say, Officer Gill, are we going to be safe? I'm worried. What would you answer them?
It's so difficult because you can't guarantee anyone's safety. The President of the United States is the most secure person in the world, probably, but still his safety is not 100% guaranteed. So I can't answer that question and say, no, everything's going to be okay. I don't know that. I wish that I could say that.
But we have to reassure our children.
Yeah, but you do have to reassure them that things will be better, especially if these type of things are reported ahead of time. Things can be better, and let them know that this whole thing is going to be reviewed by law enforcement and school boards all over the country, and they'll check against their own procedures and protocol to possibly make changes. But things can always get better with training and reporting these type of potential incidents to keep them from happening. And it does happen quite often, because you hear a lot of people now saying that nothing was done. Well, a lot of these attacks have been thwarted because students and people have come forward.
And maybe something as simple as, we parents, we police officers, we educators, we're here to protect you because we heard the story of the coach who put himself in harm's way to save some kids. Gil, thank you. All right, there is a need for blood, and that's why One Blood's asking for donations this morning.
Yeah, they're supply depleted, rushing, of course, to help the wounded in that massacre in South Florida. Channel 4's Ashley Harding explains how you can help, even here in our area, coming up at 7:30. Senator Marco Rubio called this shooting a, quote, terrible day you pray never comes. You can read his full statement and reaction from other lawmakers and from President Trump right now on our website, news4jax.com.
I'll talk about the president. I know he was due to be in Orlando Friday. There is unofficial word from the White House now that he may travel to Parkland, so we'll keep you apprised of that.
Right, in the meantime, it is 17 minutes after 7 o'clock. We want to make sure that you are aware as you head out the door that there is dense fog. You need to be careful. I could hardly see it just a few feet in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, the visibility in some areas is negligible, Rich.
It is, and we're seeing visibility, not much improvements with visibility, I should say, whether it's in the Duval County area, off to the west of us, or even along the beaches there. Dense fog advisory through 10 o'clock. 1.5 miles at Brunswick. We continue at 1 mile at Jackson. You can see from the purple swath here that we've got those areas that will take us down to a tenth or less, a third for Gainesville, a half for Palatka. St. Augustine's looking better at 10 miles visibility, 6 at Jack's Beach. That's also started to migrate inland along that river channel to Arlington, the Dames Point, and around anywhere from St. John's Bluffing, continuing near the airport. 7 miles visibility. Down, though, for Fernandina, under 1 mile, and we're at a tenth there for NAS Jax. Baldwin has seen a little improvement up to that third of a mile. Here's our downtown tower cam right now. We are stuck right in that mean moisture level, and we are seeing nothing. 50 degrees, calm conditions. That means that fog is going to linger. 10 o'clock expiration time, foggy conditions, mostly cloudy conditions, and then, like the backdrop there, partly cloudy skies. That means the pollen count is also lifting from the upper 6s yesterday to low 7s and closer to an 8 for tomorrow. That sniffle and sneeze dust will continue. Dense fog through 10. Partly cloudy, a warm up on the way, so those flip-flops are back in the forecast. 50s now for the Golden Isles, into the 50s to the south, and it's the upper 50s, lower 60s, continuing in southeast Georgia, mainly in the 50s. Now I'd put McClenny right in that same bag there all the way over to Live Oak and Lake City. Let's take you through your forecast hour by hour. There's 12:30, partly cloudy skies. We'll see the potential for some of, and there's the depiction, some of that coastal fog to linger under what becomes a stronger southwesterly flow. It's 5 to 10 miles an hour here for today. As it picks up, it will start to push some of that off. But notice how that kind of migrates right up the coastline there as that marine layer could stick around. Overnight tonight, under what will be those partly cloudy skies, even mostly clear conditions, we're back to what will be a good setup there for the potential of some fog early Friday. Low cloud cover at the very least. That too will start to blend away about 9 to 10 o'clock. By 1 to 2, we start to clear things out. And if this played all the way through Friday night, we'd see a weak frontal boundary starting to push through. There's a very slight chance for showers just north of our area, closer to, say, like the Altamaha and those coastal zones. That will fade away as it slips south. In your forecast for today, by 11 o'clock, we're on our way to those 70s. We top out at 78 degrees, and I think that's the perfect depiction for our sky cover as we'll have those partly cloudy skies. Right now, though, we still have the fog, partly cloudy conditions with southwest winds picking up. Southwest winds means that the temperatures that we have inland, those 70s and 80s, will be shared all the way out to the beaches, making it along the sandy shores and/or in those malls and megalamarts, we're going to see those flip-flop friendly temperatures. 80s in the forecast there Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Continue that trend on into Sunday with the upper 70s, lower 80s. I posted the info here for race week, race weekend. Looks good with near similar temperatures as you move into the world's most famous beach. We're back here for the start of the work week. Some of us may be a little groggy from a weekend full of races. Temperatures are warming up to the upper 70s, lower 80s. Just a spotty chance for some showers late Sunday and continue that trend through Wednesday. 107.3 The River, another spot on those iHeart stations where you can get the Weather Authority forecast while you're on the go. Let's check that go with Crystal and your Time Saver Traffic.
Now, here's Safe Touch Security Time Saver Traffic.
It's still a mess in southern St. Johns County. Earlier this morning, there's a semi that caught fire along I-95 northbound just before State Road 206. The right and center lane remains blocked and traffic is just at a standstill. As you're traveling from US 1 up to State Road 206, traffic is backed up for about 3 miles. Taking a quick check with the speeds, you are moving at about 3 miles per hour. So your alternate route, you'll definitely want to hop onto US 1, and this is why, because traffic is just not moving. You know, FHP is on the scene as well as Fire Rescue and St. Johns County Sheriff's Office trying to get this crash cleared, investigate what happened. It's going to take some time. So for now, you'll have to take that detour. It's going to take you 48 minutes, and this is along I-95 just from US 1 up to State Road 206. So instead of staying on 95, go ahead and get off at that US 1 exit, head north, and then go ahead and head west on State Road 206 to get back onto I-95. It's only going to take you about 10 minutes for that entire detour. So save yourself about 35 to 40 minutes and take US 1. That was your Safe Touch Security Time Saver Traffic. We'll be right back.
Jurors scheduled to return Tuesday to court to begin the penalty phase in Donald Smith's murder trial. The 61-year-old was found guilty of kidnapping and rape in 8-year-old Cherish Periwinkle's death as well.
We brought you gavel-to-gavel coverage of the trial. The testimony was gut-wrenching. At times, jurors cried as they listened to how the little girl was murdered. During closing arguments yesterday, prosecutor Mark Khalil asked the jury to pause and reflect for 3 minutes about what they had seen and heard the last 2 days. He said 3 minutes was how long Cherish fought for her last breaths. State law now requires a unanimous decision from jurors to sentence Smith to death.
If not, he'll serve the rest of his life in prison. At 7:45, we talked to a local attorney about the penalty phase of this case. That's coming up. One Blood asking for donations. Its supply depleted, helping victims of the Stoneman Douglas massacre.
More on that story ahead. Plus, we are learning more about the teenager police say took the lives of 17 people. Our coverage continues after the break.
The morning show starts right now with a breaking news alert.
The search for answers, the search for a motive. As the 19-year-old accused of carrying out a deadly school massacre sits in jail, this is Nicholas Cruz's mugshot.
Cruz was taken to the Broward County Jail overnight and booked early this morning. You can see, if you look closely, he is still wearing a hospital gown. He was taken to the hospital really just as a precaution yesterday after he was arrested. That's because investigators said that he had been complaining of having trouble breathing. We are working to learn more, of course, though, about the 17 people he is accused of gunning down.
We do know that about 12 people have been identified, and the Broward County Sheriff says a football coach was killed. That coach reportedly got in the line of fire to protect his students. Social media posts have identified him as Coach Aaron Feast. Channel 4's Vic Michelucci is live in Parkland. Vic, this is a community that was voted the safest in Florida last year. Certainly different thought this morning.
It really is, Bruce. People still waking up just in shock. They are devastated. We are seeing people come with flowers, with balloons, with T-shirts that they already made. It's just something that they would have never expected in this neighborhood. I'm standing in front of a gated community. There's palm trees all over. Everything is manicured. Everybody mows their lawn. Everything looks so nice and clean here. You got people coming out for their morning jogs. They're going with their kids. You know, you would never, ever, ever expect that something like this would happen here. But I'm about a quarter of a mile away from the entrance of the school. It is still an active crime scene. We got a little bit closer, but the sheriff's office keeping it closed off, and for good measure. This is a very large investigation that they're going to have to take part in. We also unfortunately know that some of the bodies of the victims are still inside. So here's the latest of what we know. 17 people killed, 14 others injured, 5 have life-threatening injuries. The victims have not been identified, but we know that they've been taken to at least 4 different hospitals here in the South Florida Broward County area. Now we do have video, new video, of the police car with crews inside going into the Broward County Jail. As you said, he was winded when he was taken into custody in Coral Springs. Police there, out of a precaution, taking him to the hospital under heavy guard. He was not there for very long, apparently did not have severe injuries at all. We know that he had a very troublesome past. He was expelled. He was 19 years old and had disturbing social media accounts. People say they predicted this would happen. When they heard about the shooting, a lot of them thought that it was Nikolas Cruz. Unfortunately, according to investigators, their worst fears did come to reality. So now investigators trying to work with the community as well as so many political leaders to find out if this could have been prevented, what could have happened. But there are so many people that say more needs to be done than just sending thoughts and prayers here. So that's why Ashley Harding is talking with experts at One Blood, because right now, Ashley, I'm told that there is an immediate need for donations, specifically one type. Ashley?
Yes, Vic, that's true. We're talking about O negative because that's the universal blood type. You know, we're here at One Blood, the location in Jacksonville Beach. I was just inside talking to the people who are working here. They say they have 2 people who had scheduled appointments. Okay, 2 people, but they expect that number to go up. They expect that volume to go up in light of what happened yesterday. They said that's what they saw immediately following the Pulse nightclub shooting 2 years ago. They say the number that day went up to 78. That's a very high number for people to donate at just one location. Here's what people need to know. You mentioned that blood type. Again, O negative is the universal blood type, and it is used to treat trauma patients. That is what is needed. And here's the thing, it is only present in a very small percentage of the population. So just for some perspective, following the Pulse nightclub shooting, One Blood said it received 28,000 pints of blood. That's, according to them, 10,000 more than the agency's average weekly volume. So people are encouraged to help out, lend a hand, help these survivors who are fighting for their lives, those who need blood. Generally, healthy people can donate blood if they're at least 16 and weigh at least 110 pounds. We've posted that information about where to donate blood to help these survivors. We posted that on news4jax.com. Of course, you can also walk to any location. You don't necessarily need an appointment. It is recommended, but it's not required to go in and donate and help these people. Vic, back to you.
Ashley Harding, thank you so much, and such an important message to spread this morning as so many people want to know how they can help. That is a way that you can help right in Northeast Florida. Go make that donation and you could potentially save a life here in South Florida. Meanwhile, it is going to be a very busy day here in Broward County, all around Parkland. We know that law enforcement investigators are at least 3 different properties right now serving search warrants, including the property where the accused gunman Nikolas Cruz recently lived, another property that he visited lately. We're trying to find out more details. We know that he lost his mother. She died a couple of years back. We don't know if maybe that played into his mental state here. We are also learning that he's going to appear in court sometime later today. Of course, we will keep you posted on that. And the sheriff of Broward County, Scott Israel, going to give us another update. That is scheduled for 10:30 this morning as they continue that just tedious, lengthy, and of course, heartbreaking process of working to identify the victims here, working to spread the word, to let their next of kin know about what happened, as well as the doctors and nurses at the hospitals doing everything they can to make sure that the people that were injured and taken to these medical centers are going to be okay. At last check, at least 5 people in critical condition. Bruce, going to toss it back to you.
All right, Dick. What happened has people asking 3 fundamental questions. Number 1, why? Number 2, how do we protect our children? Number 3, how do we stop the violence? Let's look at the history. Yesterday's shooting at Douglas High in South Florida is the 3rd deadliest shooting in modern U.S. history. Here's a look at the 5 deadliest shootings from kindergartens to universities this country has ever seen. The 5th largest, let's go to Colorado. The shooting at Columbine High School in Littleton. It took 13 lives. Then we jump to 1999. 2 shooters made home videos prior to the attack, making reference to their plans to kill students at the school. 14 lives were lost at this shooting at the University of Texas in Austin. In 1966, a former Marine sharpshooter climbed to the observation deck atop the main building tower and opened fire on people below in the surrounding campus and streets. This is all too close to home for me because I remember being live right here in this studio on air covering these shootings, thinking about my own children. Yesterday's shooting in South Florida, it is the 3rd deadliest. At least 17 people were killed when a former student opened fire at Douglas High School. A motive is still not clear. And then who can forget what happened in Connecticut? That shooting comes 5 years after Sandy Hook, when 20 children at 6 staff members of the Newtown, Connecticut elementary school were gunned down. And the history lesson continues. The deadliest shooting at a school, the Virginia Tech massacre. 32 deaths, 2007. 32 students and teachers died after being gunned down on campus. A student shot and killed a freshman student, then entered a classroom building, locked the main doors, and went from room to room shooting people. And in each of those cases, I remember us sitting here talking about the fact that people were huddled under desks, huddled in closets. We heard one student in South Florida say that there was one teacher who took them all into a very small closet. They were just huddled together. It was close. It was hot. They were scared. And again, people are asking, why? How do we protect our children? And how do we make this stop, Jen?
And of course, the hardest part is we may never know why. Now, times like these can certainly be hard for children to understand. And for parents, starting that conversation can even be more difficult. So in the next hour, we're going to hear from a child psychologist with some advice about how to talk with your kids about tragedies like this so they're not afraid to go to school. We are expecting also new information to be released about the shooting at 10:30. That's when we're told the sheriff will hold a news conference. We will bring it to you live when that happens. Of course, we are following every development on air and online. News4JAX reporter Eric Avanier is also in Parkland. He'll join us live this evening with an update, certainly on the victim's conditions and new details that we learn over the next several hours about this accused gunman. This story always continues online. On our website, you'll find reaction from parents and students from the scene. Just visit news4jax.com. We'll be right back.
(7:42), 18 away from the top of the hour. Let me show you what's off to our left there. I think the only way you could see the rest of the buildings is if you were Peter Pan.
Really?
You could sweep in and out of them.
And if you weren't familiar with downtown Jacksonville or the South Bank, you'd have no idea what you were looking at right now in terms of perspective as to where it is. But
Like,
it is.
how do they make those building tops float?
And it's just as bad as you get, obviously, down on the roadways. You know, oftentimes, Rich, will see this and that fog is kind of a little higher and it doesn't impact any travelers or any people who's driving. But that's not the case this morning.
No, it's down here at terra firma, or down where our feet are on ground level. That's where we're seeing some of that thick fog. That shot right there, it kind of reminds me of that image when the Millennium Falcon was flying into Orlando Calrissian resided, and they had the clouds with those little houses above the clouds. Always kind of has that almost Star Wars kind of look to it. Thick fog widespread here from the beaches all the way back to the placid Gulf of Mexico and the highways and byways in between. 2.5 Lake City, which is up 1/3 to 0. We continue under a mile now, so we actually dropped to JIA 7 to 10 as we move from Brunswick even into Jack's Beach. Fernandina, you're up to 2. Arlington continues at 7. Under a mile now, down to 1/10 of a mile. So you leave the airport and you're heading south. You've got the fog that will continue to thicken as you cross over, say, 103rd, all the way over the I-10 bypass here and continue into the Buckman. It does start to see some improvements so as you move out of Mandarin and continue to the beaches for Duval County, and the same goes for St. John's. That 1/3 of a mile, though, it continues there for Baldwin. But there's that look once again as we look over where Orlando lives. 50 degrees, 1 at 51. We'll take that 1 degree downside. The other number that's going up for today, like our temperatures, will be the pollen count. From a low 6 yesterday, it was at 6.3 to a 7.3 for today, and it edges up to almost an 8 for tomorrow. The pollen will continue. The sniffle and sneeze dust will continue even through the weekend. Partly cloudy and warmer. My favorite part of the forecast there is the flip-flops are back on our feet. Partly cloudy and nice conditions. I guess you could have gotten away with them yesterday. It was just a little damp at times, or a little cool at times under those cloudy skies. 55 right now at Brunswick and St. Simons, the lower 50s at Meridian. The Altamaha moving northward, and then it's 50s here that continue to the south. And the 50s continue to tell the story here in our Florida zones. A little bit warmer under what is that blanket of cloud cover, that blanket of foggy mess outside. We'll see it blending away in the 10 o'clock hour, leading to cloudy skies through 11, partly cloudy by the lunch hour. And under partly cloudy skies, that's the way we'll close out this afternoon. When John's back for tonight, he'll be watching some of that fog beginning to propagate to the west of us, and that will spread back through our area for tomorrow morning as we start finally Friday. The same idea about 10 o'clock and then clearing out from the lunch hour to 1 o'clock as we're back to those partly cloudy skies for Friday's forecast. From there and into our forecast for today, under what will be those gray skies this morning, the foggy conditions will begin to separate during the 11 and 12 o'clock hour. There's what it will look like for that 5 o'clock ride home, where you might need the just the light wet weather gear this morning because of the fog, the mist and drizzle. You'll need the sunshades, especially if you head west back home later on this afternoon. Southwest winds are light, and you see where the haze starts to show up. This is that fog that will wake up to the patchy stuff out there for the start of our finally Friday. Temperatures inland areas are mainly going to see 80s. McClenny and Gainesville, I would go ahead and just push those numbers into the lower 80s. Southeast Georgia will find temperatures in that pinpoint forecast. More of the same with 80s. Fargo, I'd put you at 80 degrees with a couple of the 70s, a little closer to I-75 for Southeast Georgia. Meanwhile, Brunswick, St. Mary's, southward from the First Coast beaches all the way down through St. Augustine and Palm Coast will find temperatures topping out in the mid to upper 70s. At the airport, 78 degrees under that southwesterly flow. It won't take much for those busy spots to tip the needle to those lower 80s. The flip-flop weather's back in our forecast here for this Friday Eve. And the weekend forecast, whether you're going to be hanging here local or maybe heading to the world's most famous beach for some races, you can don the flip-flops there as well, as we'll continue with the upper 70s, lower 80s, a very slight chance for showers in Jacksonville late Sunday night. Plays into the work week forecast where we'll continue with just a spotty chance for the wet weather. Temperatures continue above normal, starting to feel a bit more like spring. 47 minutes after the hour, B101.5, your forecast, as well as throwback hip-hop and R&B. Just at the touch of your finger, you can get that Weather Authority forecast. 47 minutes after the hour, let's check in with Crystal in that Time Saver traffic.
Now, here's Safe Touch Security Time Saver traffic.
The parking lot along I-95 in southern St. Johns County starting to grow after a semi-fire out there continues to block 2 lanes just before you hit State Road 206. Backing up just a little bit, you can see traffic all the way back to US 1 for about 4 miles. And this is traffic that's going less than 5 miles per hour. So you've got to get off on US 1 and take US 1 north. You can head back west using State Road 206. And it's only going to be about a 10-minute drive if you take that detour. So that beats the over an hour it's going to take you to travel along I-95 north from US 1 up to State Road 206. Here's a live look with the DOT cameras. Once you get up to that crash site, this is just south of 206. So once you get closer to that scene of that crash in the semi-fire. You're going to see that 2 right lanes are blocked right now. FHP as well as the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office deputies, they're on the scene still investigating what happened this morning. As soon as they get that tow truck out there and get that semi out of the way, all lanes will reopen, but it will take some time for traffic recovery. So keep that in mind. St. Johns County, you'll want to use US 1 instead of I-95. That was your Safe Touch Security Time Saver Traffic.
Jurors will return to the Duval County Courthouse on Tuesday to decide if Donald Smith should serve life in prison or be put to death. It took 8 women and 4 men just 12 minutes to return a guilty verdict yesterday in the kidnapping, rape, and murder of 8-year-old Cherish Periwinkle. Local defense attorney Percy King joining us this morning to examine this next phase of the case, the penalty phase, as it's commonly referred to. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I do appreciate it.
Good morning.
First, we know that a psychoanalyst was there to help Julie Schlax, who's a former prosecutor but was the defense attorney for Donald Smith, to help her select jurors. Is that unusual, and what's the benefit of having someone like that there?
It's not unusual. What typically happens is that you want to see some of the mannerisms of the potential jurors to see whether or not they react to certain things, to try to determine how they would actually, maybe help your case, or how they would actually side. So, no, I mean, there are actually shows on TV about that, like Bull.
Right.
So, no, it's not. They actually make quite a bit of a good living doing it.
Doing it and kind of just trying to figure out, in this case, do you think that the presence of that psychoanalyst was really for the criminal case, or was it for the penalty phase to determine whether or not the jurors that were selected would be for or against the death penalty?
Based upon the facts of the case, they pretty much had a very difficult case to try, such that they probably believed that there was going to be a guilty verdict. So therefore, what do? You turn your sights on saving the person's life. So it then becomes more important to try to pick a jury that may or may not really stand behind the death penalty. So when you look at the jury makeup, okay, the 8 women, although they may side against you when it comes to the criminal phase, being that they found them guilty, sometimes women are less likely to sentence someone to death. Doesn't mean that they're going to be that in this case, but in some cases.
So it's interesting because as we look at this penalty phase now, and if you're at home and you're not a lawyer, it can be a little difficult to understand. Yes. But prosecutors have a certain guidelines, kind of aggravating factors that have to be met in this case.
Yes.
In your opinion, is that an easy sell for them, knowing what you know about this case?
This case is really difficult for a defense attorney because you have so many allegations and now proven facts that he's been found guilty that are amongst the aggravating factors. For example, the victim was under 12. Okay, you can say that the crime was extremely heinous. You looked at how the doctor on the stand, the medical examiner, pretty much broke down in explaining some of the details. So when you look at those things, and also the fact that he had been on a sexual registry, offender registry, almost since its inception, there's so many things pointing against the defense that it's going to be an uphill battle, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's interesting because all of the things that you named in terms of the fact that he had just been released from prison 20 days earlier before he kidnapped, raped, and killed Cherish, the fact that he was on the sex offender registry since 2007, the fact that he had been arrested for like 40 times, several of them sex crimes. The jurors never heard any of that during the criminal phase, but they can hear that now.
Yes.
And that could be a weighing factor, do you think, for these 8 women?
Oh, by far, it can be. And in a lot of respects, it should be. The judge has the ability to allow, any testimony or evidence in that he finds relevant to the criminal conduct and the defendant's character. So all of those things will come in, and it's going to be by far an uphill battle for the defense attorney.
Do you think that this will be a long process? They normally can last a couple of days, or do you think this will be quick, like we saw with the trial itself, only lasted 2 days?
It really depends. It depends on how sure the prosecutor is, or prosecutors are of their case. They may just say, okay, we have 6 aggravating factors, and I think that there are 16 that you can actually look at, and that might just be enough. However, if they truly want to make sure that they have crossed their T's and dotted their I's, it may be somewhat of a long process.
Percy King, local defense attorney here. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Want to remind everyone, this is not an issue of a majority decision anymore. You'll remember the Florida Supreme Court came back and said that every single juror must agree, so it must be unanimous. And of course, we'll bring you the information as it happens with this beginning on Tuesday. Bruce?
South Florida assuring the families affected by this school massacre that the state is there to help them, whether it be funeral expenses or whether it be counseling costs. News4JAX reporter Vic Michelucci is also in South Florida. Take you back there live to the scene in the 8 o'clock hour.